In spite of Russian opposition, a Bush-backed plan to build a missile defense shield in Czechoslovakia gained NATO endorsement at a summit in Romania today. Russia interprets plans to build a missile shield as menacing to its own security. Meanwhile, Germany and France are still opposing another Bush-backed plan to allow former Soviet states Ukraine and Georgia ascension into NATO due to Russia's strong opposition. On the second day of the largest NATO summit in history, member countries are offering pledges of support for the Afghanistan mission. FSRN's Amy Miller reports from within the summit in Bucharest.
First and foremost, as you know, the Allies have decided to offer invitations to two countries of the Western Balkans to begin accession talks to join the alliance. To those countries who have achieved their goal, let me say on behalf of all the allies, congratulations and welcome to the family.
And so was the opening remarks by Secretary-General Jaap Scheffer on the second day of the NATO summit in Bucharest, Romania. Croatia and Albania have become members. In reaction, Greece blocking their invitation over their name, the Macedonian delegation has left the summit. This now brings the total NATO membership to 28 countries. Debate over new memberships and the Afghanistan mission have dominated discussions at the summit. French President Sarkozy, in his speech announcing France's deployment of 700 troops to Kabul.
It is precisely because there's a need for reinforcement that we must participate. We have a strong calling to help Afghanistan in its fight against the terrorists, so that Afghanistan can be rebuilt and so that then we can return home.
NATO was established in 1949 as a Euro-Atlantic military alliance to balance what a few years later became the Warsaw Pact, a large group of communist countries in Eastern Europe. Without an enemy opposition after the Warsaw Pact fell in the early 90s, NATO had to reinvent its identity. Dr. Rada D'Souza, an international law professor at the University of Westminster, explains.
When the UN was formed, it was formed on the understanding, or this was the claim that the UN made, that from that point onwards, the UN alone will wage war where necessary. Yeah? And one needs to ask why then regional defense organizations were allowed within a UN framework. Now, I'm not underestimating the contradictions between what Bush called the old and the new Europe, nor am I underestimating the United States' own military ambitions without the financial backing. And I'm also not underestimating the fact that there are a lot of European powers making money out of this whole situation. But I think there are more fundamental issues about the character of the post-World War institutions that we need to be aware of, within which NATO functions.
In 1999, NATO had its second coming of age on its 50th anniversary with the 78-day bombing of the former Yugoslavia, with international humanitarianism as its new existential justification. Again, Dr. D'Souza.
And I think people go by the political rhetoric of what these institutions claim for themselves and don't really investigate what they actually do. And what they actually do is, they are the armed wing for capitalism. And that is how imperialism has always functioned. And the victims of it in the final analysis is people in the third world, the colonized subjects, and they continue to be the victims.
NATO is currently operating in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kosovo. It is expected to return to Sudan in the near future and has a large Mediterranean naval fleet, which they state is a surveillance against terrorism operation. It is expected that a vision statement against terrorism will be adopted before tomorrow's closing ceremony of the summit. From inside the NATO summit in Bucharest for FSRN, this is Amy Miller.